March 10th, 2018 was the start of Microcampus, a 28-day learning experience that takes place in the community of Shizou, in which we learn more about the culture, the lifestyles, as well as about ourselves. We were to expand our boundaries and escape the bubble of Shanghai. But beforehand, each and every one of us chose a topic that we would focus in on at Shizou. My topic was based on local and small businesses. From my experience, as well as from the help of teachers and locals, I eventually developed this. In order to understand the evolution of different small businesses in Shizou, one might consider the contrast between an older business run by a local, a newer business run by a local, as well as a modern business run by a newcomer. The older businesses in Shizou that I visited and talked to were fairly contrasting. One of them were the silversmiths, and the others were the owners of the cheese factory. Both, however, were taught from a young age how to make cheese or how to create jewelry, meaning that their businesses were family run and taught. A recurring question was how their business was affected by tourism. The cheese factory found that over time, their business developed into something that was almost solely relied on the touristic progression of Shizou. Because of this, their business also became more of a tourist attraction rather than an actual business that indulges in sales. This has caused their business to, over time, add more and more products into their shop. In addition, they have also started to use technology to their benefit by ordering products using WeChat or Alipay, and even having Dali TV crews in and out of their shop. The silversmiths had never needed to necessarily appeal to tourists. They create traditional buy jewelry that they encourage mainly locals to buy. Mr. Zhao, the silversmith, has seen how the land around his business has changed for the past 30 years due to the rise in tourism. He has seen the farmlands change into shops and the roads into markets, and believes that the impact of tourism creates expectations too much for his work and time is worth. He too also uses technology for advertisements and even has some custom orders from people in Shizou. On the other hand, there are slightly newer businesses run by locals as well. A frequent pattern that I noticed was definitely that these businesses seem to appeal to tourist expectations of Shizou, and almost always sold tie-dye. As for these businesses, I found that they were all fairly similar, were opened for 1 to 5 years, and already knew what the tourists had expected of Shizou. Tie-dye, embroidered floral patterns, colorful buy clothing with large rounded hats. In fact, over time, because of the growing of marijuana, these plants have even started to appear on the tie-dye patterns that reportedly reflect the culture of Shizou. The origin of these businesses were also alike. These business owners had grown up with the Bai culture and learned these traditions and skills from their family. This was apparent with the woman running a shop. Her name was Miss Fu. Miss Fu, a 60-year-old woman, has been running her business for about 5 years and sells mainly clothing. However, the traditional Bai clothing is all handmade by her. She talked about how in her generation, everyone knew how to sew and make tie-dye. But now, younger generations have been losing interest, which makes the clothing appeal more to tourists rather than the local residents. As for the more modern businesses run by the newcomers of Shizou, they were very much different. Many of the business owners I talked to said that they had moved here for a change of pace in their lives, as well as for their hobby or interest. Ms. Young, who runs a tea shop, reflected all aspects of these. She formerly ran an inn, but eventually felt that the pressure was too much for her and came to Shizou. During her time at the inn, she also picked up the hobby of tea, and so, when she arrived here, she started a tea shop. In addition, Miss Young had also decided to pick up a slightly more remote area of Shizou, where she could meet a few tourists, have chats with them about tea, as well as have tea with them. She finds tourists to be a key factor in not only her business, but also to her everyday personal well-being and lifestyle. Another instance of a new business would have been a nearby cafe run by a man named Peter. I had actually talked to one of his workers, Roy. Roy had come to Shizou for a change of pace in his life, to be able to understand and perceive his life in different ways as well. Furthermore, he also had the skills to be able to work at a cafe, as he has had previous experience of doing so. However, just from being able to observe the cafe, it was obvious that it had a much more modern atmosphere to it, especially when compared to the other restaurants and cafes of Shizou. This attracted many customers from all around, even foreigners. After being there for just around 10 minutes, the style, the design, and the atmosphere definitely had an effect on who or how many people were there. Furthermore, there was also a shop down the street run by a man named Jinjin. His business sold mainly tie-dye, but was also a restaurant and showed the same modern style as Pessoa, Peter's Cafe. There were also a few other places like this one. A newly opened chicken place down a local busy street run by Mr. Liu blasted advertisements and had poster boards and cutouts laid across the restaurant. This did, in fact, seem to attract customers, of both locals as well as tourists. I found that such a different restaurant, in such a different atmosphere, led locals to come visit the contrasting area, as well as for tourists from big cities to eat a food that was more familiar to them. I never imagined how much variation there would be in these businesses, although each were still heavily affected by the tourism in their town. The fact that each business saw tourism as a different outlet for them was fascinating, whether it be for making profit, a burden, conversations, making connections, or a way for them to de stress and relax. Every business was extremely open to being able to share their experiences with me, and the month here has been an absolute wonderful experience. So, I'd like to be able to thank everyone who was a part of this experience and was able to make this month possible. This 28-day long journey has been able to help me open new doors, make new connections, as well as create more thoughts and ideas.